Friends, welcome to this new episode. Today we have a really curious case where a series of events took place that at first don't have an explanation. But in the end, everything is resolved in a very remarkable way. I'd like to know your thoughts, if you've experienced something similar, and whether you think this is truly possible or if something else happened. Send your experience to the WhatsApp number on screen. You can send as many voice messages as you want, regardless of length. You can add photos, videos, or anything else needed to make your story complete. Then I'll review all the material, and if I have any questions, I'll get in touch with you. Friends, just a reminder, this Saturday we have a truly amazing video, don't miss it. But on Sunday, at 6 in the evening, the second interview of Stories from the Other Side will be published on this same channel. If you haven't seen the first one, it's with Jonathan Medium. You can go look for it, it's on the channel, but this Sunday at 6 in the evening, the second interview will be published. And I really hope you'll be there and that you don't miss it. Friends, with that said, let's get started right now with this new paranormal episode. Enjoy it. For more than a year, I lived with an entity that kept giving me different signs, which maybe only I felt, or rather, only I could understand. Because in the end, I'm gonna tell you how I started to connect all of this, what my feelings were. And finally, how from one day to the next, everything ended. I'm Pedro from Jujuy, and soon you'll hear about one of the most intense experiences of my life. And this showed me that the unexplainable often appears without giving us any kind of warning.
I also want to say something else. Paranormal experiences, well, I don't really know what to call those souls or spirits or whatever comes close to you. They don't come to scare you. Maybe they're coming to give us a message, a warning, or I don't know, to say goodbye.
As I just mentioned, this experience lasted exactly 1 year and 2 days, and different kinds of situations gradually helped me understand what it was all about. It's impossible to share everything that happened. I remember them, of course, but many were so similar that they could make this story a bit too much. That's why I'm going to detail the most significant things, leaving the important part for the end, the reason behind all of this that happened. It all started on July 19th, 2019, while I was at my own house and talking with my sister. We were sitting at the table having breakfast, drinking method and chatting like we did every morning. And in a second I was overwhelmed by a strong smell, a smell that was unmistakable and that I recognized perfectly. But you'll understand this detail a little later in this story. I'll just tell you that it was unpleasant, very unpleasant, and that it could scare me, being associated with a person's breath. The thing is, I felt it on my own face, as if someone next to me had blown this hot, horrible breath at me. It was so strong that I looked all around trying to find where this smell was coming from, but I didn't find anything. Neither my sister nor I did it. It was the middle of July, so the windows were closed, and inside the house there was nothing that could give off such a strong smell. And I insist that it was something very particular, and I recognized it immediately, although it was impossible to figure out its origin at that moment. The strange thing was that it only lasted a couple of seconds and then it was gone. I even stopped feeling that unseen hot breath on my face. Of course, I asked my sister if she had felt the same thing I did, and she hadn't smelled it at any point. This was confusing to me too. How could it be that she hadn't felt it or smelled it? So at that moment, I just thought it was all a simple misunderstanding. From that moment on, this smell started to follow me at different times. Specifically, I never smelled it in the kitchen again like that time, but it kept happening almost systematically whenever I went to bed at night to sleep. That is, once I turned off the light and rested my head on the pillow, I would smell it for just a few seconds. That warmth and that very particular smell that completely surrounded my head and then disappeared. I should point out that I didn't fully understand what was happening, so there was no fear involved. I didn't associate it with anything paranormal. I mean, although I couldn't find a possible explanation either. What worried me the most, honestly, was that it might be a health issue, but
Along with that, in the early mornings at midnight, my bed would move and I'm going to say this, it would move in different ways. Sometimes it was very abrupt, and sometimes it was a gentle movement like a caress. But the purpose of the bed moving was to wake me up, to make me wake up. That's why I say the purpose of the movement was for me to wake up. Sometimes it was rough, very rough or sudden. Sometimes it was very gentle, but I would wake up. The curious thing about this is that I didn't feel afraid. I mean, it wasn't like I had been dreaming. I hadn't been having a nightmare. I would just wake up. I didn't even ask myself questions or start thinking. From there, what happened? What's it about? What do I know? As it started happening to me. I mean, almost every night it was when I went to bed that I would smell the scent. And at midnight, my bed would start to move.
In fact, this movement became so intense that it would hit the walls and the floor. I thought it was an earthquake, but it wasn't. What was moving was actually just my bed. But what was the reason? And it wasn't just one night. As I said, this happened repeatedly every night, or almost every night. I thoroughly checked the entire room several times, especially the pillow, the sheets, the bed, to make sure that smell wasn't playing a trick on me. Maybe there was a dead animal, I don't know, but the truth is I never found anything. Just like those movements of the bed that started to become annoying and a bit disturbing. So up to this point, I can only tell you that these were the two most significant events that happened repeatedly, but they're not necessarily terrifying. So there's not much more mystery, but something else was about to happen. And somehow it started to bring this story to a close in the most unexpected way for me. To continue, we're going to move to July 20th, 2020, that is exactly 1 year and 1 day after that first event where it was delivered, while having breakfast with my sister, in that unique smell. At that time, like the rest of the country, we were under mandatory lockdown because of the COVID pandemic. And I hear my sister's phone ring. She answers, talks for a few minutes, hangs up, and then I hear her start talking to my mother. From my room, I couldn't hear what they were talking about, so I got up because the situation caught my attention. That's when I find myself near the doorway with my mom, and she tells me very concerned, "Pedro, please go check on Tito. They said he's in the hospital in serious condition." Tito, whom I didn't mention before, was my brother. At that moment, I felt something unique throughout my whole body, and for the first time in a long time, I felt fear and somehow understood, though I can't explain why, that everything that had been happening during the last year had to do with that day, with my brother, and with what was about to happen. I went back to the room, changed as quickly as possible to leave, and when I was ready, I started to go out. And here something very strange happened, which I couldn't say if it was something paranormal or if it just happened to me because of the worry of the moment. When I left my room, there's a hallway that was a bit dark at that moment since the light was off and the only illumination came from the living room and the kitchen. And it was really shocking for me to walk out and get about halfway down this hallway. I see the image of a person on the floor dressed in scrubs, and it was even more shocking. I thought it was my brother, even though I couldn't see his face clearly. Something inside me told me it was him, mainly because of his clothes, which were exactly his work uniform. This apparition, as crazy and strange as it may seem, was very clear, very real, and it only lasted a second before it disappeared, blending into the floor itself. I hope that's clear. Again, I don't know if it was paranormal or just due to what I was experiencing, but I wanted to mention it so that everyone can draw their own conclusions.
Well, after that, what I have to say as well, even though I got up, I couldn't go out because I remember the date was July 2020. We were under protocol. We couldn't go anywhere, much less go to a hospital or a clinic. So I stayed that night. Nothing happened to me that night. I didn't smell anything. I didn't feel any movement from the bed. There was no bed movement. The next day I got up very early in the morning, and when I was about to open the door of my room to go out, I smelled that odor. It was very strong, practically right under my nose, really strong. So I went out, did what I had to do, came back home, and when I entered my room, the smell was all over the place. I mean, it's like you walk into the room and you realize the whole room has that smell, you know? And
This is where you'll understand a little better why I think all of this was connected. When my sister asked me that first day about what kind of smell I was sensing, I mentioned that it was a person's breath, but something was missing. There was something particular about this smell. It was the typical breath of a person who is alcoholic. Maybe not everyone knows what I mean, maybe some do, but either way, know that it's a very specific and truly unpleasant smell. That smell, that alcoholic and acidic breath was what I felt, as if someone was breathing right in my face, just inches away. And I didn't feel it that morning, I only felt it for a year, and now it was stronger than ever. Curiously, while my brother was hospitalized, my brother was an alcoholic. My brother passed away on July 21, 2020. From that moment on, I never smelled that scent again, and my bed never moved again either. Therefore, and this is a completely personal opinion, I believe that my brother, or part of his energy, I don't know if this is possible, he tried to communicate with me during that year, trying to get us to see each other again, to get closer during that last period, which without knowing it, or maybe he did, would be his last in this life.
well, what I have to say, like I mentioned at the beginning, paranormal things aren't always meant to scare you. I might even dare to say that's exactly what they are. Are they the souls or spirits of people? They come to give you warnings, to try to communicate with you, to tell you something, say goodbye, or whatever it may be. Because I have to clarify something, I was very close with that brother of mine, and because of life circumstances as well. We grew apart and had been distant for a long time, and we didn't even talk on the phone, we just sent each other messages. I think he tried to warn me in some way that he wasn't going to be in this world anymore, and I don't know. Maybe he was trying to tell me that we should talk or meet up, or that we should be together one last time, even if it's just sharing something.